Hello everyone, welcome back to Spurs Live. Just me today, Josh hosting for you guys. Josh and Matt are away today, but I'm not alone. We have got two very, very special guests on the show today. So welcome from the Two Blues podcast, Charms and Dan. Hello boys, how are we?
Not bad, bro. How you doing? Nice to be on.
Yeah, it's really good to have you boys on. I'm really looking forward to today. As we just had a little chat before, and I'm really looking forward to this derby debate with you boys.
I bet you are. A long time coming. First time in 15 years you've had the upper hand as well. So,
yeah. Well, mate, I know. So we're going to get on to a few key talking points. Obviously, there's one man he was very close to my heart. That is very important to you lads this season. That is Mauricio Pochettino. So we're going to get on to him later. But we're just going to start on just a couple of easy points on how the season started so far, lads. So before we start, remember to like, comment, subscribe, guys, if you're new to the channel. If you're returning, your regular viewers, and you don't know, Two Blues Podcast, boys, shout out, where can these boys find you?
At Two Blues Podcast everywhere, bro. On the YouTube, on the Instagram, on the TikTok, at Two Blues Podcast. And yeah, make sure to like, make sure to get involved in the comments as well. We're live, man. You're not going to get this chance to flame Chelsea as bad as this.
This is a chance, lads, Spurs fans, this is a chance of a lifetime here. We do not, since Roman Abramovich took over back in the early 2000s, we have not had this chance ever. Right, this club ruined my childhood. I'm going to enjoy this. Right, this is sweet, sweet revenge for decades of pain that they've caused me on a personal level. You know, I don't know about you lads, but I feel the Spurs-Chelsea rivalry is as big as Spurs-Arsenal in most ways. Like, it doesn't get the coverage necessarily that it should, but I feel like the hatred between the two clubs is as big as you'll ever get. What do you boys think?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like, it's definitely an underrated rivalry. I feel like apart from the two clubs that feel the tension, people don't really understand what it feels like. But because it's not like, obviously there is a London rivalry there, but I feel like it's just more personal. It's not like it's like a line through the area. It's more like when we play, you know that we're really gunning for it more than normal matches. I'm sure it's the same with you guys as well. I mean, listen, I got more love for Eden Hazard than any player I can remember when it comes to playing against Tottenham. And I mean, the smiles that man put on my face growing up, I mean, it was plentisome. And I'm sure that was the complete opposite for yourself. So
that man caused the worst night of my life. Genuinely worst night of my life was caused by that fat little Belgian. I can't stand him, honestly. The fact that we had him signed up for us as well. Redknapp had him in the bag, and then somehow that bald fraud Levi's let him go to you. Oh, that man, him and Drogba. Didier Drogba has caused me more pain than anyone else in this life could have possibly done. I hate that man with a passion. I mean, for all his brilliance. So does Ledley King. Yeah. Every semi-final, quarter-final I grew up watching us, every final, bar the 2009, that man destroyed us. Every single time, no matter what we did.
When it wasn't Drogba, it was Diego Costa after that. It was just one big bully striker onto another, wasn't it?
It's a different one when we play you lads, because we lose every time to you lads, almost every single time. You know, we had that period with Conte. We played you 3 times in a month and got spanked every single time. 2 weeks in a row we played you 3 times, lost 3. It was every time I see Chelsea on our fixture list, I just think that's it. And last year when we got that win at home, I was in disbelief. But lads, this season it looks like we could be on for more of the same. Because start to life for you guys this season has not been what you guys thought it was going to be necessarily under Pochettino after a promising start to your pre-season. Obviously, the big Nkunku injuries affected it massively, in my opinion, and we're going to get onto that at some point. But, boys, I don't mind who takes it away first, but what do you make of your start to the season? You know, how happy, how upset are you with it? What needs to change? And has it affected your outlook across the whole season, Chelsea-wise?
I think it's early days to say, has it affected our whole outlook? The one thing that, and I'm going to have to ask you on this, is we've been told a lot that Poch is very, very stubborn. And obviously, as you've said, the Nkunku injury has thrown a massive spanner into the works. Played 4 at the back the whole way throughout pre-season, and suddenly we've reverted to this 5, which is just no Chelsea fan on the planet on social media at the bridge. No Chelsea fan understands it. Whether Poch reverts back to the 4 after the international break, we all hope so, but we just don't know. And we are getting the feeling that Poch is going to keep trying this 5 at the back until it gets to a point at which it's not going to work anymore. And we know Bowley doesn't have the patience. So it's one of those where we're hoping that it can turn around, but it needs to turn around soon, because Chelsea had a run of, or, at the start of this season, Chelsea have 8 or 9 games, which you say is a fairly easy run. If we don't get our form up around then, we've probably got 10 games back to back with top 6, 7 sides. And it's not too far off to say that if we don't get our form turned around in the next 3, 4 games, we could be in a relegation battle come Christmas. And I don't think we'll be there at the end of the season, but it's tough, bro, with the amount of youngsters that we have in the team, with the lack of experience as well. And Charms will test to this as well, that the players that we brought in over the summer, we'll speak about that in a bit, but average age of 20.5. And you look at the signings that we've made, it's clear that there's a long-term plan in there, but you do just have to think, are we sacrificing another season for greatness next year? And it is a little bit kind of like, we had one season last year, which I'd argue is the worst season I've ever had as a Chelsea fan in my life. I don't want to go through that again. I wanted to see instant results. And when you consider that we've spent $1 billion in 3 windows, realistically, we should have a better starting squad than we do.
Agreed. Like, the thing is, I think with Pochettino, like you said, I know that man inside out. I've watched him for years. He gave me some of my best memories as a Spurs fan ever. I knew, but as soon as you hired him, he was going to try and play 4-2-3-1 with a shadow striker. I knew he was going to do it, because in Nkunku and Dele Alli, they would have played the exact same position. They would have done the exact same thing. There's such a similar skill set that, although people might not put it together straight away, same skill set. I think that's exactly what he was looking for, is that 4-2-3-1 that we played when we sort of ran you guys close to the league title under Conte, and the season before when we lost out to Leicester and then eventually Arsenal at the end. That 4-2-3-1 is his favourite formation. I've never seen him play a 3 at the back in my life, ever. The only time we've really ever seen Poch have a 3 is when sort of Danny Rose or Walker would go and maybe one would stay, or if they both go, Wanyama might drop into the middle and the centre-backs would push out wide. Other than that, I've never seen Pochettino with a back 3. So when he rolled that out against Liverpool and he sort of seemed to have stuck with it, all because possibly Nkunku's injured, that blows my mind. Considering the money you've spent, I would have thought that if his plan was to play this 4-2-3-1 with that centre-forward in, either one, I know people don't rate him and I don't rate him either, you would have kept Kai Havertz, because that's probably the only time that position's in football nowadays, that sort of position that's faded out. Poch is the only one that uses it. Or you would have brought in an adequate replacement rather than 50 wingers. I don't really understand it. Charles, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And I've said this time and time again, and it's getting to the point where it's a little bit heady to just keep banging on. But I just want to see the 4-2-3-1 in action, and I don't understand why we can't find someone to fill in that sort of, centre attacking mid role. We got Sterling who can do that. Mykhailo Mudrik's clearly not being favoured to be in that position. Just like Cole Palmer, feel like he can fill that role in as well. So I don't understand the hesitancy to give it a try. I understand that we are in a bit of a transitional period. I hate the term, but you have to say it, And I feel like we're in the midst of Pochettino feeling like he's able to experiment. Obviously, not really the right time for a fan's perspective to be chopping and changing and experimenting. But listen, while we've got the easiest run of games we're going to have, if he feels like that's the way that he can see the team working, being structured, I understand it. However, it hasn't worked. We're losing to Nottingham Forest at home. We're underperforming. We're not taking our opportunities. And I feel like, obviously, that game looked a lot worse on paper than it did actually watching it. I feel like we should have won that game. We were the dominant side. We just happened to be on the back end of the scoring line. But the same thing happened against West Ham. And when that becomes a common trend, you're dropping points. And I don't understand why now is the time to start experimenting with players in this formation and not trying, when he knows that he wants to play a 4-2-3-1. He brought 2 holding midfielders. He put 2 6s in to play that too. So I don't understand why that hasn't been worked, just because we haven't got Nkunku in. And obviously Lavia has now got that injury, so that might be holding him off for going, let's give it a try in and kind of work in that 10 and figure that out. But, I don't feel like the fact that Nkunku's not there, so we can't work it, and Lavia's not here now, so we definitely can't even try with it. It just feels a little bit flippant. It feels a little bit like let's just kind of deal with what we can. And I just don't like that. It doesn't scream ambitious, which is something that me and Dan were looking forward looking forward to this season. 4-2-3-1, go in there, get wide, be fast, get in behind the defense. And now we look quite flat with that 3, that 5. I feel like we're leaving too much of the fullbacks. And I wasn't too high on Malo Gusto as soon as Reece James fell out of favour or got injured. And then Malo Gusto comes in. He's never really been in my good books, particularly. Dan's been up and down with him, more and more on the up on the recent. So I'll give him credit where credit's due. He's been playing better. But I just feel like there's just such a clear sort of disparity of where we should be at, particularly with our fullbacks, but with our overall formation in general, that I just don't feel comfortable when I look at our team sheet and I just see that 5. It just drives me nuts going into a game, particularly games like Luton, where we should go in there and win that 4-5-0 if we want to be Chelsea. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like we just end up being a bit too cagey.
Well, I think the thing is the DNA of Chelsea looks very different under Bowley, and that's the thing that I think fans are really struggling with. Usually, you guys are a down season followed by an immediate upturn league challenging season, and that's just the way it is. It was that merry-go-round of managers, but the money was well spent on sort of experienced, hit the ground running players that weren't necessarily going to have the sell-on value, but were going to perform then and there, and they were going to get you the titles and the trophies that made you the most successful club in England over the past couple of decades. But I think Potter's come in at a time where the whole DNA of the club changed. They tried to do that with Potter, didn't quite work. I think that might have been just a bit too early for Potter. That was a lot to take in. Yeah. And I think he was a bit of a fall guy in the end for Bowley. But you look at the billions spent and you look at the poor season last year, your worst season since, 2015 under Mourinho, where you finished 11th? Was that the last time you finished in the bottom half? I mean,
yeah, it was with
he's coming off the back of that. He's coming off the back of $1 billion spent, which is the figure everyone throws around. I know it's not necessarily that with sort of amortization and net spend and stuff like that, but that's the figure on his head, and that's the pressure he's coming into it with. And he is an unrelenting coach, and he doesn't actually always start well. That's one bit of sort of solace I'll give you. Poch nearly got sacked at Spurs in his first year. It was bad. It was horrific because he takes a season to decide who he wants and who he doesn't want. And we had something called Bomb Squad, which I don't know if you guys remember. It was sort of Benoit, Suakoto, Huddleston, them sort of boys. He got them all out. He was unrelenting. He got them all out. But the problem I think he might have is that with Bowley's sort of new idea of under 25s only, which is a strange one, I think, considering some of the problems that you have, I think he's not going to be allowed to sell players on. And even if you do want to sell players on, you've got players under 8-9 year contracts that if they don't work out, like Makolo Mudryk at the minute possibly isn't working out, you're not going to be able to get them on and they're stuck in that squad. But the last thing I'm going to touch on this early season thing, Chelsea-wise, is you talked about the performances looking a bit flat at times, but one of the big problems I've seen with you guys is not taking chances. If Raheem Sterling isn't putting them away, no one is. You're underperforming XG massively, which is a similar problem you had under Potter. With $1 billion spent and sort of Nico Jackson, the only fit recognised striker at the club, is that a massive hole that you think should have been filled in the summer that wasn't?
100%, not just in the summer, but this is a problem that Chelsea have been going through for the last 10, 15 years. We very rarely have strikers that work out. When they do, they are big physical presences. We've probably spent $1 billion alone on strikers that haven't worked out in the last 20 years. Players like Alvaro Morata, 60 mil. Lukaku, 100 mil. Players like this that have taken up massive six-figure a week contracts as well have really, really hurt the club. And I think that's made us a lot more hesitant, a lot more skeptical when looking at the market. Obviously, prices increasing every single window as well. If Chelsea want a striker, the profile, a 20, 25 goal a season striker, you're going to be paying 60, 70 million minimum. And it's just a risk that Chelsea have decided not to take. I think the majority of the transfers that they've done, particularly this window, but also in the last 3, have been very, very business focused. You look at a lot of the outgoings, Lewis Hall, they were pushing to get rid of Conor Gallagher, Ian Matson, Trevor Chalobah. A lot of these players, academy players, are just being sold because they are 100% pure profit. The fans do not want to see these players go. But when, obviously, as it's been discussed very publicly, when you bring a player in, that transfer fee is divided by the number of years on a contract. So that cost is brought down. To balance the books, a player like Conor Gallagher, 50, 60 mil straight away, the owners are just looking at his, potential sale price rather than his on the pitch contributions. And I feel like that is the case for a lot of the Chelsea players at the moment, particularly the homegrown ones. And it is hurting us. There is a lot. We got rid of 45 players in the summer, whether that was sold, released or on loan. And I think Poch probably had a hand in quite a few of those. There are a few players that he publicly wanted to get rid of, like Cucurella, who are still in the squad, maybe in exile over the last couple of months. But he has publicly said, despite getting rid of all these players, it's still too big of a squad. It's still too big for him to manage. This was the issue last year. There were players, getting changed outside the changing room. Lampard said himself he couldn't even realize he couldn't train these players all in one group. I feel like Pochettino, we were sold a very good man manager, someone that was very good with the youth. And obviously, Bowley bought into that being, this being a youthful project and a long-term project. But I do struggle to see, I feel like Pochettino needs 5 or 6 maybe players in the first team that he can work with, not 30 academy players that are struggling for game time, don't know their position in this club. Chelsea, for the last 4 or 5 years, have had so many players like your Kai Havertz, like your Mason Mount, who we don't really know where their best position is. And we've probably tried 6 or 7 players at centre forward or at striker in the last 2 years. The right player has just not been available for the right price. Obviously, a lot of Chelsea fans wanted Osimhen. But again, that's minimum 150 mil, a big, big risk. And honestly, I feel like Chelsea are just playing it safe and waiting for Ivan Toney in January. Obviously, with a Prem-proven striker, I think Chelsea are just fed up looking elsewhere in Europe and want to stay in England.
He's the obvious guy, isn't he? He's got to be. Everyone that needs a striker, Spurs, Arsenal, Chelsea, all of them, they've all got to be looking at Toney come January.
I think even Man United, Newcastle, there are a lot of clubs, in England and across Europe looking at Toney.
Strikers are hard to come by now.
Yeah,
and he's a quality player. I did say this the other day. The consistency he's shown to get 30 goals and assists for the last 4 or 5 seasons, phenomenal. He's a great player. And obviously, you guys still need a 9. That's probably the only position.
Great strikers are left. Yeah, it's the only position really that we're really struggling in at the minute with Richie. Obviously, Kane left. He went to Bayern for that 100 million, which we were all opposed to on this channel for a while. But I think by the time it came to the end of it, it's made so much more sense to get rid of him. I think if we'd have kept him around, I became less confident he was going to sign the contract. I mean, you can't lose the best striker in the world, in my opinion, for free. And especially to a rival, because I think he had United written all over him if he went.
Does Haaland play for you lot?
Oh, don't have a word. Haaland cannot lace Kane's boots. When it comes to footballer, Haaland could not lace Kane's boots as a footballer. Striker, maybe, but when it comes to a footballing ability, don't talk to me about that.
I just want to say on that note, because I do think it's a ridiculous sentiment personally. If you had to pick between right now having Harry Kane or Erling Haaland signed at Tottenham Football Club, who are you taking? And if you say Harry Kane, I'm sorry.
Do you know what? In this system, Haaland, but I wouldn't have traded Kane last year.
Yeah, because you're looking decent. That's why. I mean, this is the thing.
We'll touch on that.
Realistically, Charms, would we have traded Aiden Hazard for Haaland? I probably wouldn't have traded Hazard for Haaland.
You can't trade your goat. There's the sentimentality. You can't trade your goat. He's probably our greatest ever player. He's worth more than anyone else could ever be to us.
I mean, you say that until the swap's done, and then all of a sudden, Erling Haaland is the greatest player to ever touch football in Tottenham jersey. But listen, I understand it. No, I understand it definitely. Especially coming through, mostly through the academy. But yeah, coming through in the way you do.
I know what you're talking about. You're talking about that Arsenal picture. He's ours. He's ours.
Mostly coming through the Tottenham academy. Obviously, he is relatively a homegrown talent in northwest London. So I can imagine that you would have wanted him there. But obviously cashing in on him 100 million, you wouldn't have got anywhere near that, even if there was a transfer window a year later. I feel the same thing about the Mo Salah situation. I feel like Liverpool should have cashed in on Mo Salah the minute that even 150 million was dropped. I had 200 million. And I was thinking, what? And then I'm pretty sure there was talks of 250, and I was half tempted to bloody wear a Liverpool top with that type of money being spoken about. That's a ridiculous $250 million on one player who's in his 30s. I don't understand it, but obviously I can get it. I can get it. But come January, there's an 100 million spike to that transfer, isn't there? So yeah, I get it. Every club has their sort of player that they wouldn't release, even if it's the more logical thing. But obviously, we've seen that benefit to Spurs since he's gone. You guys have looked fantastic. Ange has been playing his ball. Son's looked great, especially in that last match. I was calling him to come back in and have an absolute massive game. And I picked him for my FPL differentials. No clue how he was under 10% ownership. He's a fantastic football player. I think he's one of the greatest players we've seen in the Premier League. I think he's arguably the greatest Asian player we've ever seen in the Premier League, So, I get it. I can really get the hesitancy to sell Harry Kane, but now everything's said and done, I'm sure there is a bit of a bright smile on the faces.
Yeah, well, he's left and it's a new era, but I think the system has replaced Kane massively. I think Ange's system is unbelievable. And, we're going to touch on that now quickly. We've talked about you boys have had a tough start to life. Spurs are flying at the minute, second in the league, unbeaten, 3 wins and a draw, a tough draw against Brentford away from home, but that's not a bad result by any means. I think a lot of people are getting quite high on us at the minute. I'm optimistic but cautious because I've seen it before, and I think without the way Ange plays football, I think when some of the really tough fixtures, you boys, because no matter who Chelsea have, you could be in League Two. I'd still be scared of Chelsea away. I think we've got a few tough fixtures against the top 6 away from home, and we could have a few batterings because defensively, whilst we are solid at the minute, we are open down the flanks with Udogie and Porro, but also we're a couple injuries away. While Chelsea have too many players in their squad, we've got a large squad also, but not any real depth in quality. Our spine looks fragile. If Madders or Basuma or Romero gets injured, we're in real trouble. But we're flying at the moment. How are you boys feeling watching us at the top of the league at the minute?
Stressed. Very, very stressed. It's not it's enjoyable, but it's not enjoyable. It's
West Ham in third as well, and Arsenal just below. It is a long day for you boys.
It is a long, long day. But I mean, it's been, I'd say the most impressive performance that I've seen so far was the 2-0 over United. Obviously, I think a lot of people will call out the Burnley because Son was the standout man and Son really turned it on. And yeah, Charms and I have been saying for a couple of weeks, it is just going to take that one game for that switch to flick. And I saw an infographic earlier, actually, that suggested, I can't remember what it was exactly, but Son isn't particularly good at scoring early on in the season. He does tend to start hitting later on in the season. So I have no doubt that if you don't get a number 9, I don't see any reason why Son shouldn't be that number 9. I think he showed alongside Harry Kane when they were playing in a 2 that he was more than capable enough to play as a striker. So I think Son could definitely fulfill that role. And for me, I think it's the midfield. I think Basuma is just so, and I say underrated. People are screaming about his performances this season, and rightly so. But last season, he got slated. Everyone was writing him off. I was saying bring him to Chelsea. He'd be a cheap replacement. Everyone was saying he's never going to be the same player at Bournemouth that he was at Brighton. Absolutely fantastic. James Maddison, signing of the summer, absolutely fantastic. All the investments that Tottenham have made is the complete opposite of when you sold Bale and just looked for the big names and you spent big money signings. But here you've really done due diligence, gone out and got the players. I mean, Charms is we're both massive fans of Udogie, particularly obviously going forward. Pedro Porro looks quite strong, albeit stronger going forward. And then, Van der Ven, good top young signings. You had that back 4 with Eric Dyer in there and Sanchez for so long. And that was always our saving grace because I knew Harry Kane could be 10 out of 10. Son could be 10 out of 10. Kulusevski could be 10 out of 10. But I knew we were going to get 3 or 4 chances at the back. And it was likely that there was going to be 1 or 2 mistakes. But Romero, I've been very critical of Romero. I think he's quite rash, but he's been very, very good this season. Obviously had a top World Cup. He's proving me wrong. A lot of these Tottenham players are putting in very, very good performances. Even players like, Højbjerg, who wouldn't, I wouldn't say they're a world beater, but consistent 8 out of 10 performances every week. And Onge has got, like you said, he knows his system. He's got his players. He knows what he wants. And at the moment, he's seeing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ange has done to Spurs what you guys thought Poch was going to do, or what sort of the expectation around Poch. It's been the opposite. Everyone thought Andrew was going to come in and we were going to plummet to sort of below mid-table. And I think Kane leaving hasn't obviously you're never going to get better necessarily without Kane. Kane was never the problem at Spurs, but I think a lot of other players have stepped up in Ange's system and they've taken the responsibility. Because obviously we've got now Sonny's the captain, which is fantastic, and then Madders and Romero are our vices, and that sort of a leadership group change, getting Dyer out of that leadership group, Højbjerg out, the culture of the club has changed massively, and sort of that Spurs DNA, old school style of wanting to play on the front foot, being aggressive, not caring. I think that's really brought the fans together this season. And that's all to do with Ange. I think I've never seen rival fans love a manager of ours so much as they do with Ange. I mean, the guy's a great talker. As much as he's a bit of a grump sometimes with the media, he's so lovable. He's brilliant. But we're going to get into Pochettino's start and sort of how he's adapted to Chelsea life, because he came in and everyone said that he is Spurs. He's so Spurs. His DNA is Tottenham. He embodied everything that we believe in our club. And to see him in that sort of that first interview, that black, gold and white training top, which annoyingly is actually really nice, it was painful. And the fact that he's sort of, talk shit about us for the whole thing in that first interview, that Spurs Twitter was on fire that day. There was any love for Poch went out the window that day for a lot of us. But how do Chelsea fans, would you say, inside the stadium and on social media, how do they feel about Poch? Do you think he'll get that sort of time because of his history that Potter never really got? Do you guys trust him to get this right?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of sympathy. I feel like people are very understanding of the situation. He's been brought in to do a tough job. And obviously, I'll be honest, when it was first announced, there's clips of it everywhere. But I was pretty adamant that he's a serial second place finisher and he doesn't have that in him to kind of cross that line. And obviously, no deliberate shade towards you guys, but I feel like that is a byproduct of like the sort of the common sort of, without saying bottling it, Tottenham, they just seem to trip up at the final hurdle. I'm not trying to be a knob. This is the thing. I'm trying to be as graceful as possible. But Tottenham have that history of sort of tripping up at the final bit. And I feel like Poch was brought into that, and that happened under him a lot. And I feel like that rubbed off on his sort of the energy around him. When you think of Pochettino, it's sort of like, will we struggle in that final hurdle? And that's what I was concerned about. And now looking at it, I feel like there is a lot more time and understanding given than there was with like a Graham Potter or there was with like a Frank Lampard, who granted did get a lot of bloody time. So I can see us kind of keeping with him, even if we were to serially underperform until like December. Listen, God forbid, but if we're not able to do too well there and we do end up like in that sort of 10th to 15th floating area by January, I can see him out the door. But that's no criticism on him that's just simply we can't deal with that. We need somebody who's going to drag us out of the mud, And I don't know where we're going to find someone like that should we be 13th in January. But, I feel like we're going to have to go shopping, because in the end of the day, there's only so much that waiting around and wishing on a prayer and playing a 5 at the back, 3 at the back system can do. You know what I mean? I feel like if you're experimenting too much, there's going to be a bit of a problem with that. But overall, I feel like the sort of Chelsea fan sort of understanding of him at the minute is, listen, he'll do the job. And that's something that I'll take, He'll do the job and he will get us Europe next season. He will make sure that we don't underperform like last year, and he'll get these kids moving, because in the end of the day, like, obviously Bowley has that weird age thing. I don't even want to go into it, but also Cobham is one of the best, if not the best football academy in the world for an up and coming young prospect. So who can we get out of that, and what can Poch do to those players? I feel like we've got a good manager for the task at hand, but there are a couple of smiles going about. So I'll let
because Cobham is a great training ground. It's just a shame none of them actually play for you. You sell them straight away because they're so good for FFP.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, no, well, yeah, listen, 65 million for Mason Mount is looking like a bargain the more that the days go by, doesn't it? So we'll take it. And Trevor Chalobah to Bayern Munich, I mean, I feel like that's still going to happen. I feel like we're just going to wait in January and then think everything's going to cross the line. But yeah, man,
I would say your best product's Reece James, but the bloke doesn't play football, so...
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
This is another thing, and I'm actually interested to ask you this, Josh, because obviously Poch is known for his intensity. When he came into Chelsea in pre-season, there was a big 1-2 weeks of just pure fitness. Conor Gallagher loved it. Everyone else didn't. Chelsea players are dropping like flies, both on and off the pitch. Now, we've all gone straight for the medical team, the medical facilities, but I've got to... Is Poch overworking him? Is this something that he did at Tottenham?
Harry Kane used to get injured notoriously every season under Pochettino. Pochettino left. He hasn't been injured since. He works his players to the bone. He gave Harry Kane ankle problem. I loved Poch when he was at Spurs, but he works those players to the bone. He's notorious for his double sessions. He doesn't relent with them. He doesn't care. He doesn't care who you are. There's double sessions and you're doing them. And he runs his players into the ground. And it will have its benefits. I think later on in the season, you'll have those benefits because the amount of teams where it would get to sort of 80 minutes, they'd tire out and we'd absolutely plow through them with that in that final 10 plus added time. Now that we're seeing the added time of sort of 10, 15 minutes added on in games, by the time it gets to the 80th minute, you'll blow some teams away because your players will be so fit. But those injury-prone players in your squad, Nkunku, I'll be surprised if you ever really see him in a Chelsea shirt. Reece James, I'll be surprised if you ever get him. The way Poch places fullbacks up and down the pitch, I'll be surprised if Reece James is ever fit for you under him. He absolutely burns his players into the ground.
Yeah, when you look at the players that we've brought in, 2 out of 3 of them are injury-prone. We've got players picking up injuries. Our fullbacks, our most important positions in this formation or a 4, Ben Chilwell and Reece James, are 2 of the most injury-prone fullbacks England has ever seen. And it is worrying. It just, the lack of consistency, both in the shape, the personnel, it does worry me going forward because it's one of those like, right, well, we've had an international break. We've had 2 weeks off. We've got 3 players potentially back for the game against Bournemouth. But then what if 3 of them, 3 other players get injured the next week? Lavia's then got injured for another 6 weeks. It just seems like it's one of those where every time we take a step forward this season, it's 2 steps back. And I mean, I'm glad that you've given me slightly more optimism in terms of it will come good at the end of the season. But I've got to say, with Charms, obviously we know the nature of Todd Bowley, and I'd be surprised if we don't pick it up soon. I'd be surprised if Poch makes it.
Do you think Bowley will pull the trigger after everything he said and he publicly backed Potter for so long? But despite paying that, I think was it 15 million to even bring him to Chelsea in the first place. You brought half of Brighton's backroom staff. You basically brought the tea lady with him as well. Got rid of them, and now he's done the same thing and he's got Poch in. Do you think he has to make a statement by backing him for the season? Or do you think, I know Julian Nagelsmann's still floating around, do you think he'll get cold feet and before Nagelsmann takes that sort of German job that he's rumoured to take?
I really, really hope he stays for nothing else. Even if we finish 14th, 15th, I hope he gets the full season, just because realistically, if we're 10th and 11th and he sacks someone, we're not going to get back to Champions League. We're going to finish mid-table-ish anyway. So you might as well just give him the time, sit him down, have a conversation and get his squad in the shape that he wants at the end of the year. This reactionary, getting rid of managers has to stop. Unfortunately, I feel like Bowley is probably more reactionary than Abramovich. He just disguises it better. Because, and I will say, we've said time and time again, he sacked Tuchel purely because of that 1-0 loss to Dinamo Zagreb. Because he literally bought in Aubameyang for Tuchel the week before. He bought in players for Tuchel the week before and then came out and said, no, that wasn't the case. We always didn't see eye to eye. Well, you were seeing eye to eye for about 2 months before that. So performances and results like that do make me worried, because if we do get knocked out of a cup competition in the early stages and we have not much else to play for, I do fear for Pochettino, particularly if he is as stubborn and doesn't change the team and doesn't change the formation. But obviously, I would like to see him given more of a chance. And I think we've seen enough in pre-season for us to still be behind him now. We're definitely not writing him off. We know that it can work. It's just frustrating that it's not.
What do you think the sort of ceiling for Poch is this season? What's the best he could do with his squad? And what's probably the lowest you think he could achieve without the fans and Bowley getting
Let's
him
not
out?
talk about the lowest, because it's looking low.
And this is the thing, though. Like what people have to understand, that in the end of the day, like, it is Chelsea Football Club. Like, it is a team that has been moulded around winning and pulling it back when the fire's really hot. And I think, honestly, best case scenario, I still think we could end up in the top 4. I mean, we're 5 games into the season. There's 38 games in the league. No, I know. I get the bloody smile off your face, Daniel. There's 33 games left. I'm sorry, but it's true. We turn up against big teams. If we can do well in this next patch of form, Nicholas Jackson could put away. We've had more dangerous attacks on paper and XG-wise than any other team in the league. We've just not put them away. We buried one of them. Nicholas Jackson has had 6 dangerous attacks and he scored 1 goal. He's had 2 sitters that I'm confident I would have smashed in if I was in the same position he was in. It's a confidence issue. And as you said, we're overworking our players. But should that start to tick? Should Cole Palmer's just come in and we've seen 23 minutes of him in the Chelsea top. What if he scores 15 goals this season? There's so much what ifs about this early in the
Well,
season.
that's a big what if. He's never scored a Premier League goal.
No,
he's never
yeah,
scored
no,
a Premier League goal, and you bought it for 40 million.
No, listen. Well, we've seen these players come out of the blue. Harry Kane's first season, what was it? He just lit it up out of nowhere. We were like, "Who's this kid?" And all of a sudden, he's one of the greatest strikers in Premier League history. I think we're way too early in the season to be jumping the gun and talking about where we're going to finish. I didn't say we're going to win the league. I said we could get top 4. As a Chelsea fan, saying that the best we can achieve this season is top 4 is criminally underrating what we used to saying. But I genuinely believe it's possible still. I'm not mad. I predicted us to come 5th this season. And I stand by it. I really don't understand why we can't come in 5th, in 6th. I feel like it's way too reactionary and way too early to say just because we've got Nkunku injured and we're playing a 5 and we don't look good and we've lost some points at Nottingham Forest, why we can't turn up and get some points against Tottenham, why we can't turn up and get some points against United, why we can't turn up and get some points against City. We always get points against City until the last 12 months. I mean, even when they looked like they were running away with it the last two seasons before the last one, couldn't do it at the bridge. You couldn't do it in a Champions League final against Chelsea. We're 3-1 underdogs in the Champions League final. It looked like it was written in the stars for City to win it. No, we just sit back deep and score on a counter-attack and just leave it as that. Pep can't get his head around it. Obviously, he figured it out after that, but people love to write us off and then it don't happen. And then they're like, Chelsea, how they done that? Every year,
Do you guys think you got a better chance than us? Do you think you've got more of a chance than Spurs of getting top 4 this year?
Right now, it would be hard to argue it, but let's have that conversation in 3 months' time. We've got the same amount of points because it's early in the season, and you never know. We could have a very Chelsea season. You could have a very Spursy season, and then we end up on top of you lot.
I mean, notoriously under Mourinho, we were top by Christmas, and I think we finished 6th that season. Like it's tough. And like I said, we're so thin. I think both teams, Spurs and Chelsea, are in this weird place where we've had the start we thought you were going to have. You've had the start everyone thought we were going to have. But we're both in this weird transition period. It's just that we've sort of kicked on early doors. But I think despite the numerous problems that Spurs have, and the same with Chelsea, weirdly, the two clubs are in such similar positions in their cycles at the minute. Despite the two clubs historically being, you can find two clubs forever apart. But I think it's one of those where Ange has taken this challenge really head on. He's the underdog. And I think Poch has come in and he's got so much to prove. And I think Poch was harshly treated because he got banded with that bottler sort of tag from Spurs. And then I think he was really over harshly criticised at PSG. I think no one's ever done well in that PSG job. But for some reason with Poch, that sort of really stuck with him and his reputation. And I think he's actually right for you guys. And I was gutted when you got him because I think he's the perfect guy to take on a group of youngsters. But I think with Poch, this is going to take a lot of time. But if you stick with him, you get the rewards. But like you said with Bowley, I'm not sure Bowley has the experience to know that. Even it's so tough coming into this league. Pep had a terrible first season in the league. The only people I've seen really come to this season, the league and dominate, Mourinho, sort of Conte when he first came in. But even Conte had a terrible start. It's your boys that come in and they start terribly and they pick it up. So notoriously, you could have a Chelsea season and finish higher. But I think the difference with this league, it's so much more competitive than it was back then. That there are when we say now there are no easy points, bar sort of Luton and maybe even Sheffield United gave City a game. There are no easy games on the fixture sheets this year. And even you've got still, that sort of fixture of death coming up. You've got that sort of fixture of 10 where you're playing the entire top 9. And teams like Brighton, Newcastle, if you're not on your game, they'll play you off the park and they'll embarrass you. And it's the same for us. I think it's going to happen to us a few times this season also.
Yeah, but there'll be nothing more Chelsea than losing a bunch of points now and then picking it all up against the big teams and doing all the drag back and making it fun when there's no need to make it exciting. You know what I mean? But I win or lose, I feel like it's going to be a rough patch ahead. But let's see how we get through it. January is not too far away, lad, and by that point we should. Well,
talking of transfer windows, we're going to talk about your guys' transfer window now. Sort of, I want to know your boys' perspective on how you feel because I know I can tell you how outside fans feel about Chelsea spending at the minute. But as fans of the club, you're used to extravagant spending, but this is on a different level. We've never seen figures like this in such a short amount of time. We've never seen it done in the way that it's done with these 8-9 year contracts. We've never seen someone like Bowley come in with no footballing experience and then put restrictions on those transfers, like no over 25s, which is why you didn't go in for James Maddison, even though he would have been fantastic for you. How do you boys feel about these restrictions that he's put on and the sort of method that he's going about?
Warm into it slowly. And I say this because when he came in, I was very, very anti-Bowley. Everything he was doing was very American, was very business, was very commercialized. Even from the preseason tours to the sponsorships that we were making, everything was very clearly about the profit, about the money. And we have seen that with a lot of the outgoings. I'd say it affected our outgoings a lot more than the incomings. Yes, we spent a lot of money, but it was not particularly well spent or well allocated. If you'd said 3 windows ago, you've got $1 billion to spend, $1 billion to build a championship winning side, treble winning side, you probably would have been able to do that. But Chelsea are so far away from that treble winning side. And a lot of it has come from overspending on players because we have... the business has been poor in the way that we've done it, i.e. if we'd have gone out and said to Brighton, we'll give you 85, 90 mil for Caicedo 3 months before we did, we probably would have got him, but we ended up waiting. We were always going to get him. Liverpool were never going to get him. But that Liverpool bid made us pay 35 million more than we had to pay. And small things like that, overpaying, 5 mil for Lavia, Cole Palmer, these players, we're buying players that, again, don't really serve a purpose. We needed a number 10. We knew that the identifiable problems, yes, we needed 2 number 6s. We went out and got them. Fantastic. But then we bought in Disasi for 45 mil and we're looking to get rid of Chalobah, which doesn't make sense to me. Obviously, that there for me is a quick book fix. You get Disasi in on a 5-year contract. That's 9 mil a year. You get Chalobah out. You've made about 35 mil to balance the books. Fantastic. Lovely jubbly. I don't like this. We said before, we said again, I don't like the book balancing. I don't like it, but it has to happen. And I was calling for 14, 15 players to go in the middle of last season. I didn't expect it to happen, but it did. And with the majority of players that we got rid of, you can't complain. Koulibaly for 25 odd mil, Havertz for 65, Mount for 60. A lot of the players that we sold, we got good money for. Yes, we made some big L's. Ziyech, Lukaku, Kepa. There have been some big L's. Kukurea as well. We have been shoehorned into spending, I think, what other people are interested in. And it was Kukurea because City were interested in him. We overpaid for Mudryk so that Arsenal didn't get him. And then Bowley's trying to balance that with, all right, we're clearly going to go out and spend ridiculous amounts of money on 16, 17-year-olds from Bolivia and Colombia and all these unknown players that we've never heard of that are going to be absolute ballers in 5 years. But he's doing that at the expense of the academy graduates. And that, again, is something that I am not not for. The whole fan base is not for. And you can really, really tell. I mean, when you go to Stamford Bridge, the atmosphere is so much flatter than it was 2-3 seasons ago. And Charms will testify as well. The most enjoyable time to be a Chelsea fan in recent history was not when we won the Champions League. It was that season when we were under a transfer embargo under Frank Lampard, when we were playing all the youth squad. And it was just vibes around Stamford Bridge because these players were genuinely players that wanted to play for the badge. Whereas these days, we're bringing players in on massive money that know if they don't sort their career in the first 3-4 months, they're likely going to be frozen out of the squad and never play at this level again. And I can understand from a human perspective and standpoint why these 18, 19-year-olds who get into such an intensive environment are struggling so much. And Bowley is putting way too much pressure on them.
Yeah, do you guys worry, though, that sort of with players like Mount leaving, Reece James not really featuring as much because of injury, you're saying, all these Cobham graduates that have gone, Tammy Abraham, another one that's gone, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, gone, Callum Hudson-Odoi, gone. Do you worry that, other than players like Thiago Silva, there's not really anyone that's played for Chelsea for more than a year? Do you worry that it's sort of
100%.
that DNA of the club, players that understand what these types of games, Spurs, Chelsea, means to the fans, someone that understands the fans, what it's like to be wearing that blue Chelsea shirt all their life? Do you get worried that that's going to be lost?
Absolutely, yeah. There was a part of me that was really concerned about particularly concerning Todd Bowley about it. Just feels like we're playing Ultimate Team. There's no sort of care for the actual players. It's just kind of, I get him in, he's quick, and get him in, he can shoot, and get him in, he can pass. Like, Enzo Fernandez had a good World Cup, get him in. And it just feels like we're just accruing all these players to kind of play together in a sort of NBA sort of draft system where no matter who it is, they'll gel because they have fixed positions. And it's almost like they don't understand the ethos of sort of British football, where like when those players get in there and they get in those teams and they play for the badge, you know, and they do the knee slide down for the crowd and you really feel that passion, you get to hit the name chants. We're losing it because we just don't have the time to come up with the chance for, you know, 30 different players over the course of 18 months. And we don't have time to have these special moments where Super Kai can go and dip round the goalkeeper in a Champions League final and get that love for him. We're not getting that, you know. And obviously we have the Reece James and we have the Thiago Silva and we have those players who we can show love to. But as we've said, Thiago Silva's going to get phased out soon. Reece James has made a wheat of it. Every other player in the club's been there for 6 weeks. So it's sort of there is a point of that where there definitely is a sort of confusion in the club DNA where there's too many new players and there's not enough longevity to really understand what we're playing for, and then that sort of overlaps that Chelsea winners DNA because that sort of leaks in player by player. You know, you drop that with the next player and sort of, you know, when you've had that big win, you get your club captain. You know, you always had that John Terry going up to the young ones going, that was playing at the bridge and that was Chelsea Football Club and that will roll off on the youngest. But we're not getting that, you know, and you are right. With this massive transition all at once and this Bowley ball, this Bowley system, everything that's going on behind closed doors, it's kind of without that human touch, you know, it lacks that sort of extra little, which Roman Abramovich used to put on everything. I always felt like every transfer brought in through Roman had shown them, you know, like brought them in and showed them a match and been like, this is the team you're going to go play for. Look at the energy. And it almost feels like that's not happening anymore. And it hurts to see.
Do you get worried that players, one, that you just sort of, you're going to become victims of a market that you've created, spending all this money on these sort of young profiler players, especially the ones that have come from, like you said, Ecuador, Bolivia, Brazil, these sort of talents, that you're going to become a victim of that later down the line. Two, that, you know, these long contracts are going to kill you down the line in terms of recruitment, because if some of these players don't work out, and 50% of transfers usually don't work out no matter who you are, unless you're Man City or Brighton and you just get everything right. But usually half those don't work out. That one, you're going to struggle to move players on. Two, you're going to have that sort of Man United effect. Whereas if Chelsea come knocking, double it. And sort of three, that, like I said, that spine is heartless in that Chelsea team. I see quality, but I don't see a team when they walk out on that pitch. I don't see a team at all. I see a bunch of individuals that, you know, are you worried that they're just there for money rather than the club? 100%. You know, I know they say they're there for the club, but are they there because of that 9-year contract, that financial stability that you offer? Is that the only reason that you're there?
100%. Josh, we call them prison sentences on our channel. 8-9 contracts should not be a thing. And I'm glad, I think obviously Todd Bowley found a loophole. I'm glad that it's getting closed out and they're going to go back to the 5-year contracts, because 9-year contracts is too much. There is FFP sanctions all over that. But it 100% we're the victims of our own market. 100% we are our own worst enemy. 100% we are contributing to. Everybody is doing it, but Chelsea are a massive contributing factor to this, to this expansion, to the ridiculous transfer fees that are going to just continue to get bigger and bigger. Obviously, Saudi won't help, but clubs like Chelsea have been doing it for years. And I do worry that it's like you going back to the DNA thing. Under Roman Abramovich, there was a stable core, a stable spine to the squad. Yes, there were big incomings, big outgoings every single year, but there were still 5-6 players that stayed the same every single year. Pep likes to chop and change every year, but he still likes to keep the same base of the team. And that is something that we haven't seen for Chelsea for a long, long time. I think we've got 2 players on the books now from our Champions League win. We've got Chilwell and Thiago Silva. Obviously, Kepa's gone on loan to Real Madrid, so he's still with us, but I'm not counting him. We've got 2 players from our Champions League winning squad 2 years ago. That is absolutely ridiculous. And they have 45 players. I mean, Chelsea are renowned for sending 30-odd players on loan every single year. And how many of them do we see in a Chelsea shirt? You know, hardly ever, 1-2%. And it is worrying, but it has always been the Chelsea way. It's just, to me, feels like it's snowballing and feels like it's getting to an effect where we're going to see 15 players in and 15 players out every single window now. And it's just going to whether we make money some windows, whether we lose money some windows, I feel like Bowley is just never going to be happy. There's always going to be something going on behind the scenes because, as you said, these youth players, it's too much of a risk. You can't be bringing in all these young players and saying, I'm putting all my faith on you. It's just, and it's, to be honest, it's not fair to the players as well.
Yeah.
Agreed. I was going to get onto that, guys, because with this sort of under 25s only policy, the reason, you can bring young players in and it works is because usually there's an experienced player. Like we've got Dane Scarlett at the club and we've got Sonny at the club. Sonny and Scarlett's minutes they work in tandem. As Scarlett's go up, for example, say Scarlett does well, Sonny's will decline and that opens up the minutes for Scarlett and so on. And they give each other those minutes. You're signing players that are the same age, same position. And I've heard Chelsea fans say, oh, it's all right when Pep does it because it's depth. But the difference, I think, is from how I see it is you're not buying depth if you're buying players that are the same age bracket, not even just the same age, exactly the same age, sort of 21, 22, 23. They have the same expectations for minutes, and that's going to be the way throughout their career. They're not going to grow in tangent. They're going to sort of need to grow together, and there's just no minutes to hand out there, especially if you don't get back into Europe soon.
Yeah, I think it's the complete opposite of City. Oh, sorry, go on, Charles.
No. You go on. I'll just go after you.
I was going to say, I think it's the complete opposite of City in that Pep brings in players for competition and it boosts their performance because it means, right, I've now got competition for my starting 11. Whereas Chelsea see one player have one or two bad games, bring in competition, and that just completely demoralizes the player. And I know we speak a lot about Mudryk. He's had 18 appearances in the Premier League and just one of those has been 90 minutes. 17 he has either subbed or been subbed off. He does not get the minutes and does not get the opportunities. And unless you give these players 4 or 5 games and to get a run of form, you're just writing them off from the get-go. But yeah, sorry, James.
Yeah, 100%. No, yeah, it's. I mean, the example I was going to give is sort of like what I'm worried about is a lot of these players are going to end up in what I call the Lucas Piazza, where they come in and we look at them as a young player and we're like, great, can't wait for him to go on one season at Vitesse and come back and get 50 goal returns. And then he comes back and, okay, can't wait for now another season at Vitesse. Oh, wait, he's 28 years old and he's had 7 seasons at Vitesse now. Maybe we should get him off of our books. And I feel like that's going to happen with a couple of these players, the David Washingtons, the Endry. So, these players who right now we're licking our lips and we're like, oh, in 2 seasons when they come back in and they feel like they've got a little bit of form and they find their feet. I can't wait for it to happen. But all of a sudden it's 2030 and we're looking to get these players off of our books and we're selling them to Fulham. We're giving them away on a free to Preston North End who are in the Premier League. It's that type of thing. And I'm really concerned that is going to happen, especially with all this FFP avoidance. What I don't understand is when this FFP structure is brought into place, to avoid certain things happening. Todd Bowley's idea is, well, I've just found myself a little loophole in the market where I can exploit. No. They're there for a reason, lad. And they're going to come round and they're going to bite us in the arse. Because in 2 years when it's, Mykhailo Mudryk and this player who, was never really that good in the long run is affecting the fact that now we can't make a signing. And a Victor Osimhen's come out and said, if there was ever a play for it's Chelsea. And we can't afford him because, it's going to be an absolute mare. And, we're going to have to be worrying about things later down the line, which we just simply shouldn't be worrying about. And on top of that, no other club is worrying about. And that's one thing that concerns me about. It concerns me as well. When you have a unique one club involved sort of problem, it's really difficult to kind of draw ways out of that. It's City and navigating through a market at the same time as Chelsea. And we see now, Man City under investigation for their transfer. I'm sure Chelsea are going to look at whatever's going on at City and being like, hang on a minute, you can't book us for that because you didn't book them for that. And because we'll be the first sort of club trying this weird FFP dodging over 10-year system, we're going to be the first people to get a bollocking pretty much if it was to come to it. So I don't like the fact that it's way too experimental and it's way too risque and there's a lot on the line. And even with the transfers we are making, for a fact half of them are going to be going on loan for 3 years. So it is very dangerous. It is very worrying. And, I can't believe I'm doing this with a Spurs fan on the line, but it's like you lot I'm looking up to you guys at the minute. You know what I mean? I want us to be going in for a James Maddison. I want us to be doing that. Like, that is what I want to see. I want us to be looking at a new Doji type. Rein it in, lad. You'll get it once in 2 decades. But it's not.
You couldn't get any of them
yeah.
right now, mate. They wouldn't even touch you.
I know.
Oh.
You couldn't even think about it. And this is the thing. It's like it is it's overly ambitious. It's going for players with too much of a. I can't wait for them to take on. When you've got a James Maddison who looks fantastic at a club like Leicester, and he's not going to fit in that hole in the Championship. He needs to play for a top 6 side. And we've got Tottenham knocking on the door, and we go, you know what? Have him. It's fine. Have him.
We had a free run. I can't believe we had a free run at him. No one, other than Newcastle, had a little bit of interest, but they went and spunked it on Barnes instead. No one had a run at him at all. I can't believe it. But like the reason I worry for you guys, I look at players like Noni Madueke, and if I'm him, you've just bought me for 35 million, ex-Spurs boy as well. You've just bought me for 35 million to play right wing. And then you've just spent 45 on Cole Palmer, who's just a bit younger. And then you've also tried to buy Michael Elise, who's the same age as me, to play the same position as me. So if I'm him, I'm thinking, does the manager not trust me? Does the club not trust me in terms of the higher ups, or am I just a number to you guys that you can sort of throw in, throw out? You don't care about my resale. I'm expendable. Do you not worry that that's going to become the culture of the club?
100%. I 100% worry about it. These players are so young. They are so fragile. They have had bad experience, or not necessarily bad experiences, but not the best experiences in England before. They've got this second chance. They're thinking, fantastic, this is my dream come true. And then Chelsea just shit all over it. And it really is tough to see. And that's why for a lot of these transfers and a lot of these academy graduates, you can't be too upset and you can't be mad. Because for Lewis Hall, I'm absolutely over the moon for him. He's a Newcastle fan. He's going to get great minutes. He's going to get Champions League football. He's probably going to have a better career at Newcastle than he ever was at Chelsea. But at the same time, it's so tough to see them go. And you obviously said about Cole Palmer, Elise. I think those players, Elise would have been a perfect player because I think he was more of a 10 than a wide player. Obviously, he can play off the wide. But Cole Palmer, for me, while I'm not mad at the signing, while he's a good player, I think, it was very strange when we very clearly needed a number 10 to keep going out and buying these players. When we've had it with Mount and Havertz, that they don't have one fixed position. Timo Werner, we tried another example. We tried him on the wing, tried him up front, tried him as a second striker. We're having all these players where we're trying them in all these different utility positions. We need to just find a system and stick with it. Find what works. We have a few players that can fill in different roles where needed. Granted, you do need that in a squad, yes. But the core of your team should be out and out players. It should be a right winger who plays off the right wing. I would prefer to play a left-footed right winger and a right-footed left winger. Literally, your sole job is to get down the line, get balls in the ball, or cut in and shoot. That is your sole job. Then you have a striker whose sole job is to score, a 10 whose sole job is to create, 2 midfielders whose sole job is to protect the tech. Honestly, mate, I don't understand what is so difficult and why Chelsea have struggled so much to develop a DNA, an ethos, a structure around this team. It has been so inconsistent for so long. And I am very, very worried that a lot of these young players, while I don't doubt they have the potential, I don't think we're ever going to see it in a Chelsea shirt for sure.
Well, I think that's actually, you touched on it there, that's the big difference, honestly, between Spurs and Chelsea at the minute is in the summer, we revolutionised our transfer strategy as well, and we got in a load of data analysts. We've gone with a data approach now, similar to Brighton and Brentford, because we just don't have the money to keep up with clubs like yours. And we completely changed it to where Ange gets final say on all transfers, and every sort of transfer that we do is with his system in mind. So Brennan Johnson, people turn their nose up, especially, 40 million is a lot. And don't get me wrong, Spurs fans have been questioning it even to this point. He missed a couple of sitters on international duty. People are wondering about him. But if you look at his deeper numbers, he's a pressing machine. He's a defensive machine on the wing, which is exactly what Ange wants. He's got pace to burn. His one-on-one numbers are great, which is exactly what Ange wants. Mickey van der Ven, no one else looking at him really other than Liverpool slightly, but he's an absolute physical specimen. He's a pace demon. And in a high line, which is the only thing that Ange ever plays, he won't compromise on it. He's perfect. Yeah. He might not fit other clubs. He might not even fit Chelsea, but he fits our system perfectly. And I think that's the big difference is these players are being bought specifically for him and they're being signed off by 100%. Ange. Do you think Poch is getting signed off on these players or do you think he's just getting given them?
There's no chance. The thing is, and you can even smell it like with the players coming in, some of them, they just don't even scream Pochettino. They scream great endorsement deal and great South American club venture. it screams venture capital, and it does my head in. When you see certain players coming in and you think they're coming in because their shirts, or they're coming in because people want it. And like, it's like the Caicedo thing. Like, listen, I like the idea of signing Caicedo, but I feel like when there was so much up in and ahhing about the whole Caicedo thing, the minute we started getting played a fiddle, we should have been like, you know what? Fuck off. We'll get Lavia, we'll get someone else, and we'll figure it out. Liverpool don't struggle without 100 million. They're barely going to sleep at night thinking of that price tag, even if he turns good. But it almost felt like we were like, no, we said we're going to get him, so we're going to go and get him. And that's just not how football works. It's just not how football transfers work. It's how it works in American football because there's a finite amount of players. It works in NBA because there's a finite amount of players. But when you have the biggest sport in the world where you can get players from the back end of Zambia that as long as they play good football, you're on. You know, it doesn't matter. You will find someone that is a better bang for buck or even a better player than a Moises Caicedo. Listen, I'm saying that obviously with form in mind, so I can imagine that if he had 10 out of 10 performances in his first 3 games, I would have probably picked a different example. But it's just, I don't see why when we go in for these players, we turn into this sort of this Scrooge McDuck of no, it's ours. Let's just dip into the pond a little bit more and splash just so we can be like, look, we spent this much. And it does feel like that, you know. And I would rather, in truth, we did approach a Moneyball system like a Tottenham, like a Brentford, like a Brighton, you know, these clubs who, you know, who's Wissa? Who's Caicedo? I thought he's 67 rated. Who's this guy? Who's Mbamo? And all of a sudden, oh, I need him in my FPL. Oh, I want him in my ultimate team. Oh, I want him in that. They become these players that people end up knowing and recognizing for, and most importantly, their in-game performances and their numbers that back them up. Simple as.
Well, that's how we found Udogie. His performances before he joined us for Udinese were insane. His numbers from left wing back were unbelievable. When people were saying, "Can he transfer over?" He's been unbelievable. He's the best kept secret at the minute in Premier League football. Every Spurs fan, we've made a pact on Twitter to not talk about him because we're so worried that City and Madrid fans are going to pick up on him. The kid's unbelievable. You know, he's one of the best left backs in the league, I think, at the minute on form. You know, whether he keeps it up at such a young age is to be tested. But, you know, he's a player that we got for 15 million with a loan back clause for last year.
Unbelievable.
And he's the sort of player that Chelsea should be looking at. If you're looking at young players, how you've not had him on your radar, especially in Poch's system. You know, he can play.
Oh, it's okay. We'll just sell Fikayo Tomori instead. You know what I mean? We'll just get rid of Fikayo Tomori instead. We'll just get rid of all of the young centre backs because they just don't quite fit the profile. And ignoring Udogie for 50 million. Let's just go out there and spend lots of money on someone else. I feel like that's a bit more of the way to approach it. You know, it's kind of how we've been doing it.
It doesn't feel like you've researched like players like Fofana. Horrific injury record, absolutely horrific. Already smashed one of his ACLs before you even bought him. Literally. You bagged 70 million because you panicked. You panicked towards the end of this window last year that you didn't have enough cover. So you panic bought Fofana. Shock horror, he gets injured. You have to spend another 30 on Badashile, who is also now injured.
Our problem is the exact opposite to yours. Our problem is that we have too much money to spend and Bowley has no problem getting it out of his pocket. So if we go in for a player and the conversation is 60 mil and they turn around and go, there could not be any other interest. They could turn around and go, actually, somebody else is interested. And Bowley, all right, I have 70. Just, all right, have it, take it.
Yeah,
just because his is very much a mentality of, if I can't have it, nobody else can. And I genuinely, it is a real problem. We will see a lot of money go down the drain on that. But yeah, there's a lot of gems that we're missing out on because of strange policies and because of strange scouting. And we can sit there and say some of the players that we've bought in look fantastic, like David Washington, Angelo Gabriel, Kendry Paez looks like a fantastic buy. But these players aren't going to be ready to play in the first team until 25, 26 minimum. And again, it's just one of those things where you're looking at this Chelsea squad and you think there are so many gaping immediate problems. Why are we looking to succeed 3-4 years down the line? At that point, we might be, worst case scenario, in the Championship. These players might have relegation clauses in their contract. We might be fucked by that. Like, we do not know what is going to be happening in 2026. Like, how I don't understand how, and I understand how Todd Bowley as a businessman goes in with a 3 to 5 year business plan. Go on.
Can I just wanted to say, if that does come into fruition, can we just put a clause into this stream right now that you will return and we could talk to you again, Josh, should we be in the Championship? Because I feel like that it would.
I'm
be
not
quite
coming
funny
back on
to
this.
try
I'm
and
deleting the
consider-
Two
You
Blues
won't-
podcast if we get relegated.
If Chelsea end up in the Championship, you won't find me. I'll be on the streets and I'll be having the time of my life. You will never see me again on the internet. Honestly, it'll be the best night of my life. The night that Chelsea go down. Honestly, I don't even think it could be surpassed by Arsenal or West Ham, because you lot, just because of how you lot have been the past 2 decades and who you think you are. Oh, I would love it. I'd absolutely love nothing more.
Who we think we are? Who we think we are? Let me just say. Yeah, couple Champions Leagues here, couple Premier Leagues here, couple FA Cups here. We know who we are.
Who were you before that? Who were you before Abramovich?
Who the fuck were you lot?
Mate, we were the Hoddle and Waddle, mate. We have a lovely history. First ever team to win the double. We had a great history. Jimmy Greaves, Glenn Hoddle, we loved it. But, you know, and then you boys came into the frame. You lot ruined football. You lot ruined football. This is all your fault.
This is taking a turn.
Yeah, crazy.
Here we are. We've been bigging you up for an hour, Joe.
Yeah, do you know what? I've been surprisingly nice to Chelsea considering everything you've done to us, including taking probably our greatest manager since Bill Nick and taking. What have you done to him? You've ruined him already. He's been at Chelsea for 2 months. You ruined him.
Yeah. It must
but
suck,
ultimately,
man. FA Cups.
Yeah, mate. We've had I know. We've been in more finals than I can count, and you know, I think Kane's taken that DNA with him because he lost his first final with Bayern. So
it was all his fault.
Clearly, it's not just our fault. Not that, you know, your manager probably made one of the biggest mistakes in our history by not playing Lucas Moura in the final. Not that I'm not sure he would have won that game regardless. We got cheated out of that with that handball, but still, lads, going on to it, sort of, we're coming towards the end now. We're going to wrap up, sort of looking towards the end of the season now. I know it's early doors, but or sort of just looking into the not too distant future. Sort of, what are you hoping to happen with Chelsea and Spurs, I guess? And realistically, how do you think this season goes for both Spurs and Chelsea? Come the end of the season, who's the happier, and where do you think both clubs are?
Dan,
so we'll start with Dan.
Yeah, it's tough to predict. I mean, you said earlier, obviously, increased competition. Out of Villa, Brighton, Chelsea, Tottenham, Newcastle, Spurs, Liverpool, Man United, I'm really struggling to pick an order. I think Tottenham fans will definitely be happier than Chelsea fans come the end of the season because of the project in place. I think Onge will definitely still be in a job come the end of the season. Yeah. You will have seen some steps forward. Albeit, I don't think you'll win anything this year. Obviously, you're already out the EFL Cup. I think City will probably, or Arsenal will be nailed on for the. Yeah, you must be gutted about that. We only got through by the skin of our teeth, so we'll be right behind you in the next round. But yeah, I don't see any domestic success for Chelsea this year in either of the cups. I think obviously the fact that we've got one game a week will benefit us. I think we will start to see some stability, but it will just depend on whether Bowley can hold off from firing Pochettino. In our preseason predictions, had Chelsea down as 5th. I would like to still see that as realistic. Obviously, we are only 4 games into the season. Chelsea have 5 games now where we need to get 12 points. If we don't get 12 points out of the next 5 games, we're in serious trouble, and that 5th becomes completely unrealistic. We are looking at an 8th to 10th finish. Clubs like Villa are really, really worrying me. If we can't get some serious points on the board soon and show everybody that we are a team to beat, every game we lose, other teams get more confidence because they just turn around and go, Forest beat them, West Ham gave them a match, Bournemouth gave them and that's where the Chelsea DNA just completely breaks. So out of the happier, I think you guys are definitely going to be happier. Although I do see it being a lot closer than it is at the moment. Absolutely. I can't see us continuing in this poor vein of form.
And I follow suit with the sentiment, you know. And I also obviously I've come off the more abrasive of the pair, but I just want it to be to be stated that I just personally I find that it comes down to expectation, you know. Like I would be very disappointed with 7th place. Obviously, to step up from last year, it's just not a big enough improvement to make me happy. And I feel like with Spurs, you know, there was a lot of tentativeness with last season and then now losing Harry Kane and getting in Ange, there's a lot of shit, man. We might have a bad season here. And obviously you're looking quite good. So I feel like regardless, it's kind of pegged on for you guys to be a lot more impressed with where you were supposed to and us being a lot more disappointed than what we expected, There's levels in this game. And I feel like you're going to be kind of happy where you are. And that's not in like a dickish way at all. There's just simply levels in this game. And, you would take Ange and you would take a fourth place and you'd be like, you know what? We overperformed this year. No one at the beginning of the year saw us getting Champions League football. And here we are in fourth. And I feel like if Chelsea were to come fifth this season, one below that, we'd be like, bloody right, we came fifth. We should have entered some Champions League spots. We should have pushed for it. So, there's always going to be you lot a bit happier than we are with the results, regardless of where we land. But obviously, with everything coming out the way it is, transfers and, Chelsea still, after that transfer window, the first thing that we've said is, well, Ivan Toney might be available. I can't believe we're even discussing Ivan Toney. I think it's absolutely sinister in nature that Nicholas Jackson has had 6 opportunities on goal and we're already talking about Ivan Toney. But I will say, if he does come in, I'm putting my house on him getting a yellow card in his first game. Shout out Ivan. Yeah, I feel like just on that note, we are primed to be pretty maligned with this season and you guys. So I feel like on that note, you probably will have a better season than us. But I do feel like it's going to be a little closer than people are looking at it. As I said earlier, 5 games into a season, it's really easy to say things like, oh, Leicester had a good start to the league. You know what I mean? It's really easy to go, wow, Arsenal look like they're going to win it. It's really easy to go, wow, Tottenham are going to smoke this league. Wow, they've only got Leicester to compete with. It really is looking like one of those seasons, you know what I mean? You don't know. It's way too early to go there and start picking away people's performances because points are dropped, points are won. Simple as that. And we're not even, we're just past the 10% mark. I don't understand why everyone's up in an iron about what's going to happen. We don't know.
I agree. I think people are hot on Spurs right now, but I think they're a bit too hot. Even as a Spurs fan, my expectation before the season started, I predicted us 8th. I predicted you guys 5th. But that's only because I thought Liverpool would come back strong with their window, and I thought United would be a lot better than they've looked so far.
That's really weird you said that, though, because we've all put Chelsea 5th. I've put Tottenham 7th. You've put them 8th, and Dan put them 9th. So,
I don't know a person alive that put Spurs in the top 4 this season. I don't even think Ange would have put us top 4 before he started. But it's one of those where I think Spurs fans as a collective, I think the most important thing was a change in the football and the style. I think after, you talk about prison sentences for your players, watching Mourinho and Conte has been a Nuno. Oh, Nuno. It's been like a 3-year prison sentence for us. It's been absolutely horrific. Those managers go against everything we know and we grew up on. So I think the style of football coming back was the most important thing. And it looks like we've got that. That being said, we've had a lot of away fixtures, which have been tough, but the fixture list hasn't got too difficult for us as of yet. I think when we start to play, you guys away, sort of your Liverpools, your Cities, your Arsenals, we've got North London derby coming up soon. I think that's when one of those teams could hand us a real hiding because Ange is relentless in his style of play. He won't change for anyone. He'll play high, he'll play aggressive no matter who you are. And I think that'll come back to bite us. So like you said, I think that'll even out over the season because I think you guys will steadily improve. And once you get some of your injuries back, and if they stay fit like Reece James and Kunku, I think you guys will look a lot better back in that 4-2-3-1, which I think he'll go back to. I think you look a lot better. Likewise, I don't think either club will have silverware this season, but I don't think either fan base will be too sort of angry with that, despite, you guys being silverware monsters over the past couple of decades. I think both clubs are just looking for a sort of tangible improvement on last year and getting back into Europe. I think both clubs need Europe next year to sort of kick on. I think the biggest trophy Spurs, if we can beat you at Stamford Bridge, that would be better than that Carabao Cup.
When is that? Because we haven't got you away till like November, so that must be
it's going to be a long day for Poch when he comes back. It's going to be a very long day for Poch. Let me see. I'm going to look a quick look at your fixture list
because I know, we got
going to be massive.
Yeah, because we've got the Bournemouth, Villa, Fulham, Burnley.
So you've come to us on the 4th, and we come to you on the 24th of Feb. So post January as well. So you probably have a new squad by then.
Nice.
So we can't even predict that game, but when you lot come to the Spurs Stadium, I don't think you'll hear louder boos in your life than when Poch walks out on that pitch. Are you guys worried for that game? Do you think you could get a hiding off of us?
Nah, not hiding, but I feel like we could lose it.
It's too far away. I've got way too many concerns before the February, Josh. There are way too many games to worry about before then.
Do you know what I mean?
You boys could be in serious trouble by then.
Season could be over, mate.
Let's hope. Right, lads, it has been an absolute pleasure having you both on, making your debuts on Spurs Live. Hopefully, we get you back on, definitely for those Chelsea games. Hopefully, you're available and willing to come back on then.
Always, mate.
But it's been an absolute pleasure having you boys on. Just to let everyone know, when this goes up as well, where can everyone find you? You know, social medias, individually, your channels, where can they find you?
At Two Blues Podcast, mate. We've got C Money picks up there for everything UFC. I'll let him talk to you about that in a second. But yeah, everything at Two Blues Podcast, Instagram, TikTok. But the main one, obviously, is the YouTube. So yeah, make sure to subscribe to Spurs Live. Subscribe to us as well. Daily football content, you know what it is.
Yeah, exactly that, man. Subscribe to Blues Podcast over everything. But if you are feeling a little bit of CTE, a little bit of brain damage, and a little bit of money making, you have got C Money picks there every single week. One underdog guaranteed and a C Money guaranteed to get that bag up. But listen, while we're here, love you all. Two Blues. That's where the real passion. That's where my heart beats again, like JLS circa 2008. So bringing back the spirit of 2008, we need a Didier Drogba immediately. Let's get him in and let's bag some goals.
All right, boys, thank you for coming on. Everyone, thank you for everyone that did join the stream throughout. Those on YouTube, make sure you drop a like, subscribe to these boys on Two Blues Podcast. Thanks for coming on, boys. It's been a pleasure. Thanks,
Nice
everyone.
one. Cheers, Josh.
Peace.